Yo, what's up everyone? My name is Yura and welcome back to another Meadowlands deck profile. Today we are covering arguably my favorite meta deck in the entire format, Prophecy Spellbook. I love this deck for so many reasons, and that's mostly just because of the playstyle of this deck. This feels like an actual proper control deck, because it is, whereas I think a lot of the other quote-unquote control decks are more so just like combo decks that either floodgate you out of existence in, i.e. Infernity, well, not floodgate, but they like lock you out of existence by just setting a bunch of barriers and breaks, or they floodgate you out of existence a la Evil Swarm. This deck feels very different. It feels a lot more fair. Unless you look in the side deck at this guy, right? Don't look at him. He's not here. We don't have to talk about him, okay? Instead, look at High Priestess of Prophecy. This is Dark Magician on Estrogen. Same stats, different attribute, same card. Don't worry about it. Anyway, regardless, I love Spellbook. This deck is such a blast to play. It has so many cool little pieces to it, and I think there's a handful of different ways that you can go about building it. This variant we've been calling Monk Book for a while because it utilizes the Summoner Monk line to get access to a magical exemplar or another copy of itself to access the very powerful rank 4 pool that this deck otherwise does not have easy access to unless you're playing like, I don't know, like Breaker the Magical Warrior and just normal summoning that guy, and like, you can do that. I ain't gonna stop you, he's a spellcaster, he counts, but I think Summoner Monk does this job a little better. That said, this deck is really interesting in this format. It's one of the decks that I think you can kind of get away with not playing MST in main, and instead worry about, you know, siding it in afterwards. But this deck has a lot to it. So we're going to start with the card by card and then kind of give a general overview as we go through it, because I think the general game plan will be more obvious as we touch on more and more pieces of the main engine. That said, we are not going to go in order here. We are going to go in order of the cards that I think will help you get an understanding, if you don't already know how Spellbook works, of how the deck is meant to be played. So with that in mind, we are going to start off with Spellbook of Secrets. Arguably the most important card of the deck. It is a very simple effect. As a normal spell, this can add any Spellbook card from your deck to your hand except itself, and that is a hard once per turn. Secrets is, in many ways, unbelievably important. It, of course, gets you access to your entire engine, but it is also phenomenal for filling your graveyard with Spellbook spell cards, which is very important for a couple of cards that we'll get to later. Pairing with Secrets, we also have Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. I know it's kind of weird to start in the spells and then go to a monster, but I promise it makes sense. Spellbook Magician of Prophecy is on normal or flip face up. You can add any Spellbook spell from your deck to your hand. Very similar to Spellbook of Secrets, however, Secrets can add Blue Boy. So if you're missing a normal summon, you can then go Spellbook of Secrets, get Blue Boy normal summon, get any other piece of the deck that you are currently missing. Normally, this will be Spellbook of the Master, and Master is one of the absolute sickest pieces of this entire deck. Master reads as a normal spell if you control a spellcaster type monster, which if you just did that play, you do because you have Blue Boy on field. You can reveal another Spellbook card in your hand, then target a Spellbook normal spell card in your graveyard except Master. This card's effect becomes that target's effect, and that is a hard once per turn. Master is so cool! Master is so cool! It can't copy everything, unfortunately. There are a handful of Spellbook spell cards that are either quick plays or continuous spells or an equip spell or a field spell, but being able to copy Secrets for an extra search, Power, which we'll get to in a moment, or Eternity, which we'll also get to in a moment, is unbelievably versatile. A lot of the times you will just be using Master to copy Secrets to get another search out, because putting a Master in the graveyard is yet another Spellbook spell in the grave that will be important for when we get to Fate or Grand Spellbook Tower. The rest of the normal spells, though, we have Power, as previously mentioned. Power is a normal spell card that reads you can target a spellcaster monster you control. This turn it gains 1,000 attack, and if it does, each time it destroys an opponent's monster by battle this turn, you can add a Spellbook spell from your deck to your hand, and that is a hard once per turn. This will most of the time just be a single ad, but a 3,500 High Priestess of Prophecy is nothing to sneeze at. Same thing for a 2,600 Justice of Prophecy. That can be pretty big. I'm not currently playing it, but if you so choose to do so, I suppose you could add Diffusion Wave Motion to the deck to get like 10 gajillion searches, but that is really cope, and I don't think you should do that. However, if you want to be funny and play a more jank version of the deck, do it. I ain't gonna stop you. I love messing around with jank in this format. I'm all for jank. I love jank. Jank's my favorite thing in the goddamn game. It's so fun to mess with. But that said, power on its own, even without the silly diffusion wave motion, is a very powerful card. The attack boost is really solid. The ability to replace itself when you win in combat is additionally incredibly powerful. It's a very, very good card, and it's really nice to be able to copy with Spellbook of the Master, so you can, in theory, get double the boosts and double the adds, because they do stack. It's so cool that they stack. Oh my god, it's so cool that they stack. Sorry, I love this deck so much. It's so fun. We also have Spellbook of Eternity, the last normal Spellbook spell. I will talk about another one that you could add momentarily, but for right now, we're just going to stick with the ones that are currently in the main. Eternity reads, you can target a banished Spellbook spell card, except Eternity, and add that target to your hand, and it is a hard once per turn. Your Spellbook spells will end up banished for one reason or another, whether it be the High Priestess of Prophecy or the Spellbook of Fate that we'll touch on in a little bit, because this is your main interaction piece, and that is, yeah, your Spellbook spells are going to get banished. Also, it allows you to play under an opponent's Macro Cosmos, which is pretty slick. The other Spellbook spell card that I was going to mention that is no longer in my list, but used to be for a little bit, not Heliosphere, Spellbook Library of the Crescent. This is a card that has seen play kind of back and forth. It's a bit of a weird one. Library of the Crescent specifically reads, if you have no Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard, reveal 3 Spellbook spell cards with different names from your deck. Your opponent randomly adds one of them to your hand and shuffle the rest back into the deck. You can only activate one of these per turn, and you cannot activate any spell cards the turn you activate this card except Spellbook spell cards. This card is very weird. It's, in theory, another fantastic starter, but if you draw it in like the mid game and you don't have your resource loop online, so you just have a bunch of random Spellbook spells in the graveyard, it is kind of a dead draw, which makes me not really super keen on playing it, because I love being able to draw cards that do something no matter when I draw them. So Crescent is a little weird. That said, if you want to up the turn 1 consistency of Spellbook, you could in theory play Crescent over something like the Upstart Goblin in here, because currently that is what the Goblin is for. Same thing kind of goes for Pot of Duality, although this version of the deck does rely a little bit more on special summoning, so the Duality lock is a little less ideal. On to the rest of the cards that make this engine function, we're going to talk about the actual reason to play Spellbook in the first place, and that is both Grand Spellbook Tower and Spellbook of Fate. Both of these cards do 2 very different things, but are absurdly important to the general game plan of the deck. Grand Spellbook Tower is kind of like Runic Fountain, if you are familiar with that card from Modern. Spellbook Tower reads, once per turn during your standby phase, if you have a spellcaster monster on your side of the field or in your graveyard, which ideally you do because your entire main deck is full of spellcasters, you can place a Spellbook spell card from your graveyard on the bottom of the deck, except itself, then draw a card, and when this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent and sent to your graveyard, you can special summon a spellcaster monster from your hand or deck whose level is less than or equal to the number of Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard. This is one of the ways that you will get to the criminal in the side deck. Unfortunately, he does exist. He is pretty good, but he's mostly for sideboard things. It's kind of whatever. You don't really need to use it. But Spellbook Tower's main function is that first effect. The ability to shuffle back any Spellbook spell card in your graveyard into your deck to then replace it with a draw is phenomenal. It functionally means you will, outside of the turn that you initially play the Grand Spellbook Tower, get 2 draws per turn, which is really, really good for a deck like this that wants to keep its hand advantage active at all times. I've been considering running only 1 Grand Spellbook Tower, but if your opponent MSTs it immediately upon it getting activated, it does help to have the ability to go get a second one to set up for a following turn. You can, in theory, still just run 1 of this, because if you're on 1 and it does get outed, you can use the High Priestess of Prophecy or the ever-present Spellbook of Fate, which allows you to banish Spellbook cards from your graveyard, Spellbook spells from your graveyard, in order to activate a number of extremely powerful effects. Those effects being, for 1 card, you can return a set spell trap on the field to the hand. For 2 cards, you can Book of Moon an opponent's monster without targeting. And for 3 cards, you can non-targeting banish a card your opponent controls. This is everything. These 2 cards are literally everything. And if you banish your Grand Spellbook Tower off of Fate, you can get it back into rotation by simply getting Eternity and then adding that card back to your hand. Spellbook can functionally find its resources wherever they may be. And it is phenomenal to be able to have that amount of consistency in a deck like this that wants to keep its resource loop on at all times. There is no easy way of fully disrupting the loop if your opponent is keeping their card advantage in mind and they're going about their general turns in a, smart way, which I tend to not do because I'm bad, but it's fine. It's okay because I have fun. The other cards in the deck are mostly to facilitate this general game plan and try to make it happen a little more often. With that in mind, we've got Spellbook of Wisdom. Wisdom is kind of like Forbidden Lance for the deck. On a quick play spell, you can target a spellcaster monster on the field, then activate one of these effects. Either that face-up monster is unaffected by other spell effects this turn, or that face-up monster is unaffected by trap effects this turn. Really, really solid for trying to stick a High Priestess of Prophecy and push for game, or even to guarantee that your Spellbook Magician of Prophecy does in fact resolve. Wisdom is phenomenal, it's great to open, and honestly, I like it a lot. I've been running it at 1 for the longest time, but I'm currently bumping it up to 2 because I want to try out more copies of it, just because I think this card is really, really good. We're also on 1 copy of Spellbook of Life. This is functionally reborn for the deck, but only for spellcasters, and it does some cute little level modulation stuff that allows us for some really cool synchro plays. Life specifically reads, you can banish a spellcaster type monster from your graveyard and reveal 1 other Spellbook spell card in your hand to target a spellcaster type monster in your graveyard, special summon that target in face-up attack position, and equip it with this card. The equipped monster's level is increased by the level of the monster that was banished for this card's activation, and you can only activate 1 Spellbook of Life per turn. Notably, this card does not have that line of text on a lot of these equip reborn spells that reads, if this card is destroyed, destroy the summoned monster. Once life happens, I'm pretty sure the only thing that changes if it gets destroyed is the level gets reset. I might be wrong about that. I'm not fully sure on all the rulings for this, but to me, that's how it reads. This level modulation lets you reborn an Effect Veiler, which is notably a spellcaster tuner, and modulate it by levels either 2, 3, 4s, or 7s. I guess if you really wanted to make like a level 8 Effect Veiler tuner, I don't think you should, but you can. But the basic thing here is that it gets you access to the level 5, 7s, 6s technically, but there aren't really a lot of them that are worth it unless you want to run Tempest Magician, and 8s, which are all pretty phenomenal. They all have some really solid cards within them. The final Spellbook spell card that we're going to be including here is Spellbook Star Hall. This is kind of heavy storm protection. Each time a Spellbook spell card is activated, you can place a spell counter on this card. All spellcaster type monsters you control gain 100 attack for each spell counter on this card, and when this card with spell counters is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can add a spellcaster type monster from your deck to your hand, whose level is less than or equal to the number of spell counters that were on this card. So if you have 2 of these active at a time and your opponent were to heavy storm you, or even if you just have 1, you can at the very least replace it with most likely a blue boy and maybe even something higher if you have had it sit on the field for long enough. The rest of the main deck is kind of the other monsters that help facilitate the rest of this deck game plan. We've got Justice of Prophecy at 2, which during your end phase, if you have activated a Spellbook spell card previously this turn, you can banish this card from the field and add both 1 level 5 or higher light or dark spellcaster type monster, which High Priestess of Prophecy happens to be, and a Spellbook spell card from your deck to your hand, of which we have a plenty of wonderful targets. The other card that is similar to Justice, we're also on 1 Temperance of Prophecy. Temperance, much like Justice, gets you access to your high-level spellcaster type monsters, but does it in a slightly different manner. Temperance specifically, during your main phase, if you have activated a Spellbook spell card previously this turn, you can tribute this card in order to special summon a level 5 or higher light or dark spellcaster type monster from your deck, and you cannot special summon other level 5 or higher monsters during the turn you activate this effect. So this is one of the ways that you get to cheat out your High Priestess of Prophecy early and often. You can also reborn the Temperance using a number of different ways, mainly the Spellbook of Life, but also through Magical Exemplar, who is a really sick addition to this deck and is our Summoner Monk target of choice. Magical Exemplar reads, each time a spell card is activated, you can place 2 spell counters on this card when that spell card resolves. Once per turn, you can remove any number of spell counters from this card specifically. It does not combo with Star Hall, unfortunately. In order to special summon a spellcaster to a monster from your hand or graveyard whose level is equal to the number of spell counters you removed. The final card in the main deck that we have to talk about is the High Priestess of Prophecy herself. This is your main quote-unquote boss monster. It's weird to say that because I feel like Fate is your boss monster despite it not being a monster, but High Priestess of Prophecy is going to be your main way of pushing through boards and killing your opponent. She specifically reads, you can reveal 3 Spellbook spell cards in your hand in order to special summon her from your hand, and once per turn you can banish a Spellbook spell from your grave or hand, then target a card on the field and destroy that target. Phenomenal card. Really solid stat line, really great removal effect, and can get even bigger through the use of Spellbook of Power. Generally, just a really phenomenal add to the deck. The rest of the cards that we're on are just kind of the generics that make up Meadowlands. We're on 1 Dark Hall, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 Book of Moon, 1 Judgment, 1 Warning, and double Upstart Goblin to kind of round the deck out and make sure that we're up on spell cards. For the extra deck, we have a lot of targets for our Effect Veiler that is going to be reborn off of life. Starting off, we've got 1 Crimson Blader to deal with Mermail and a couple of other decks around, 1 Scrap Dragon to kill Gaios and just out other problematic cards, 1 Stardust Dragon to protect our continuous and field spells, 1 Black Rose Dragon to nuke the board, 1 Arcanite Magician because this card, unlike Magical Exemplar, does actually combo with Spellbook Starhall and allows us to blow up our opponent's cards on a decently high body. That is also a level 7 light spellcaster, which the light part isn't really super important, but being a level 7 spellcaster is, and we'll touch on why in just a moment. We're also on 1 Ally just a Catastor because it's probably the only good level 5 synchro that is not archetypal in the entire format. Finally, the main reason why having a level 7 spellcaster in the extra deck is important is because of Hierophant of Prophecy. This card is not phenomenal, it's certainly weaker than Gaios, but it is still a rank 7 that is decently statted and has a pretty okay detach effect. Once per turn, you can detach an Xyz material from this card in order to destroy spell trap cards your opponent controls up to the number of Spellbook spell cards in your graveyard. If you've been following along with this deck so far, you know that we fill our graveyard with Spellbook spells a lot. And Hierophant can just sometimes completely back row wipe your opponent if they let it stick, which, let's be honest, doesn't really happen a lot. But at the very least, it will chase something out, which is important. The only other rank 7 worth running is number 11, Big Eye. This guy is, I mean, he's a big eye. He steals monsters. He's good. He's a very good card. As for the rank 4 pool, we're on 1 Black Ship of Corn to deal with the Maestros and the Zenmains around, 1 Maestro because it is a card worth dealing with, and therefore it is a card worth playing, 1 Daigusto Emerald to get our monster-based resources back into the deck and get some draws going, 1 Abyss Dweller to hit graveyard decks, 1 Evil Swarm Nightmare to act as a Summoner Monk target for itself, because this is 2 level 4 darks. That is some form of interruption on your opponent's turn if you did not manage to find a way into your normal resource loop, which is, you know, that can just happen sometimes. 1 Daigusto Phoenix to be made with double Blue Boy if you ever find yourself in that position and you want to get one of the Blue Boys into the graveyard. Daigusto Phoenix is one of the only rank 2s, maybe the only rank 2 in the format that can actually detach for any reason. Because Dark Mist is by battle and also requires 3 of them. Shining Elf is when your opponent normal special summons, and Gacha Gacha Gantetsu, the other rank 2 that we're on, only detaches when this card would be destroyed. Onto the side deck, we've got some interesting choices here. We've got the 1 Jaugen. I don't actually know how to pronounce this guy's name, but it's a phenomenal card, despite the fact that it is an annoying ass Floodgate, but it's good, so we're playing it. We've got Triple Maxi to hit good combo decks, 1 Heavy Storm in the side instead of the main, because we have, again, some continuous and field spells that we do not want to blow up on our own terms. 1 Minecon for going second, triple MST in the side for playing against back row decks or otherwise decks that would cause us problems by having really important back row to hit like Infernity, 1 Dimensional Fissure for going into Mermail and a couple of other graveyard decks, and 3 Dimensional Prison to hit decks that are just going to try and run over our spellcasters to turn off our Spellbook of Fates. And among many other reasons, this is also really solid into Mermails, which I think is arguably one of the harder matchups in the format, despite the fact that I think this deck does a decent job of playing around it. So with all that said, I've yapped plenty about this deck. Let's see it in action. All right, we've got a match lined up here, and I'm going to be just putting this out real quick. I am currently sick recording the voiceover for this. I know it doesn't really sound like it, but my head is bleh. So if I miss something or I fall behind on the plays, I'm so sorry. This set was kind of insane. There was just a lot going on. This is Spellbook versus Dino Rabbit Fist. So there's just a lot of things occurring over the course of each game. They're both very, very long con decks. So some of these games do run kind of long. So I'm sorry if I missed something, but these were a really fun set to play through, and I do want to show them off. We're starting off the Spellbook player's hand with Monk, Exemplar. That really, you don't want to see those two in your opening hand. You want to see Monk, but not really the Exemplar. Veiler, Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, and the Star Hall. Into our opponent's Duality, Gene Warp Werewolf, MST, Bottomless Trap Hole, and Fire Formation Tenki. So let's see how this plays out. Our opponent's going to go first. They're going to find an MST off the top, go the Duality. Duality is going to find up the top a Rabbit. That's pretty good for the following turn. They're going to go Tanky. Tanky's going to get themselves a Bear. They're going to summon up this Xenomorph Werewolf before starting the MST and the Bottomless Trap Hole. We're going to start our turn with another draw into Effect Veiler. That's pretty nice. We're going to activate the Star Hall, which is going to get eaten by the MST. Maybe incorrect there. We probably could have used the Summoner Monk to go get a target for the Star Hall, or instead gone Magician of Prophecy first, so we could have kept the Star Hall in hand to have a target for Master, but we'll see how this goes. We're going to go Magician of Prophecy, which is going to stick. Then we're going to go Secrets. Secrets is going to get ourselves a Fate. We're going to set that Fate and pass to our opponent, who's going to find a Saber Source off the top before they rip this MST into our set Fate, which is then going to flip down our Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. They're going to normal summon out this Rescue Rabbit, which is going to be met by this Veiler in our hand, which is going to stop the Rabbit from doing anything. We're going to get this flip face up effect of a Magician of Prophecy to get ourselves a Secrets for this turn. We're going to go and draw into a Star Hall. Star Hall is going to activate. We're going to go the Secrets. Secrets is going to get ourselves another Blue Boy. We're going to go the Blue Boy because this isn't this back row did not activate last turn. We're not too worried about it. Blue Boy is going to get us a Power, and we're going to go that Power to get up to 1700 attack, which is enough to walk over this Rabbit for a good chunk of damage, triggering that Power and getting ourselves another Fate to hand. We're going to set that Fate and pass to our opponent. They're going to find another Tanky off the top. Tanky's going to activate and get themselves a Gorilla. Gorilla is going to threaten this Fate, so we're just going to activate the Fate and get it out of there. We don't really want to deal with it. We're going to boost up ourselves a little bit more with the Star Hall. They're going to run over our guy and pass to us. We find a third Magician of Prophecy off the top. This is probably like the best card of our deck. We're going to find another Secrets. Secrets is going to grab ourselves an Eternity so we can play out of our banishment. We're going to get the Fate and then boost ourselves up a little more. We're going to set that Fate and pass. We maybe could have like done something a little more to progress our game state over these past couple of turns, but just keeping Fate online to like try and stop them from getting into something like Tiger King or a Dolka feels really worth it in this scenario. So that's why we're not really going for Tower. And also just because we have two cards in our hand that are kind of actively doing nothing. And I'm going to talk about this once we get out of these replays, but I'm actually not fully convinced we still need to be on the Summoner Monk stuff. We were on it initially when we were doing like more rank 4 stuff, but I don't really know about now. They're going to normal summon this Rabbit, which is going to be met by the second Veiler in our hand. We're going to go the Fate effective, flip ourselves face down, getting ourselves another search and keeping our engine online. We're going to grab an Eternity. They're going to walk in for 300 with the Rabbit. We're going to draw into a Wisdom, go this Magical Exemplar, who's actually pretty large. We are going to trade this Bottomless Trap Hole for our Wisdom, protecting our Magical Exemplar from its effect and letting us keep a body on board. We're going to go the Eternity here, giving ourselves some more counters onto both of our Spellbook Star Halls and our Magical Exemplars. Exemplar is actually going to remove 2 spell counters here, summoning out a 1300 Blue Boy here, and then we're going to get a Prophecy off of the Secrets activation. Power is going to boost up our Blue Boy just enough so we can walk over that Xenomorph Werewolf, and then we're going to walk in for 27 over the 300 Rescue Rabbit. Power is going to finally get us access to our Spellbook Tower, and now we are pretty decently in control of this game. Our opponent is going to go for the Bear. Bear is going to remove the Magical Exemplar and walk over our Magician of Prophecy, getting themselves a Tanky and sending our Blue Boy to the graveyard. They're going to get themselves a second Bear before setting this Mirror Force. We're going to find a Master, which is not currently live, but we're going to use that Grand Spellbook Tower to draw us into another card. We're going to find the Dark Hole off the top. Dark Hole is going to get ripped and send this Bear to the graveyard. We're going to go the Summoner Monk for the Summoner Monk, and then overlay into an Emerald. We're going to Emerald, shuffle back all 3 Blue Boys into our deck so we don't lose out on more opportunities to find good normal summons. We're going to draw into a High Priestess of Prophecy off that Emerald and then pass to our opponent, who's going to find a Tour Guide off the top before they walk in with a Bear, getting themselves the Tensu to their field. Not currently live because they don't have any Beast Warriors in hand, but now this Bear is a respectable attack. We do have an Eternity in hand now, which is a pretty solid find, and we do find another Blue Boy off the top. We are just top decking into these guys left and right. We're going to go Master off the Blue Boy Search to get a copy of Secrets, to copy Secrets and then get Fate to our hand. We're going to go Eternity to get the copy of Secrets, and then go the Secrets to get ourselves a Wisdom to protect ourselves from something, and then we're just going to let our opponent try to play through this. They're going to normal summon up this Tour Guide. Tour Guide is going to summon Tour Guide. They're going to go into a Levier, which we are going to Fate. Realistically, there's a misplay here. This Bear should have just popped the Magician of Prophecy before, but this game was going on so long that we just kind of like lost track of the sauce. And that's going to happen a little later in game 3 as well, I think. But just an unfortunate misplay. I don't think it matters too much. Realistically, we should have just like hit the bear immediately, but I don't know. This definitely puts the Dino Rabbit Fist player in a worse position for sure. So we're going to banish that Levier. They're going to go the bear to pop our blue boy and then walk in for 18. No more targets left in deck, so we're just left to us to go Temperance of Prophecy. Off the top, which then we find a Justice, we're going to go the Spellbook of Wisdom to activate our Temperance here. We're going to go Temperance to get a 4100 attack High Priestess of Prophecy, banish that Master, and then walk in for Lethal. A whole lot happened in that first game. It was very, very back and forth, but this is a matchup that I actually like quite a lot. It does feel very back and forth, and I do really enjoy this matchup quite a bit. Their turn to go first again. They're going to find a Lance off the top. They're going to go the Tour Guide to start. We're going to meet that with a Veiler. We actually have a pretty solid opener hand ourselves, but they do have the MST and the Bottomless here. We find a Dark Hole off the top before we just normal summon out the Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. Magician is going to find a Master. We're going to go Secrets to get Power, and then Master to copy Secrets to get ourselves Grand Spellbook Tower. We're going to go Power boost up our Blue Boy to get a Search by walking over this Tour Guide. Power is going to get us a Star Hall. We're going to activate that Star Hall and then activate the Scramble Spellbook Tower. They are going to MST out the Tower because that is the more worrisome card. And then we're going to set both the Fate and the Wisdom and pass to our opponent. They're going to find a Gwaiba. Gwaiba is definitely worth the banish, but they are going to go the Forbidden Lance to protect it. So now, because Fate does not target, we actually do still have another target that is valid to get rid of, and we're going to get rid of that Bottomless Trap Hole. They are still going to get the trigger the Gwaiba here. Gwaiba is going to summon Gwaiba, and then main phase 2, they're going to make a Logia before setting down this Judgment. We do actually have a way to bait out this Logia with this Dark Hole, which is pretty nice, but nothing really to do past that. We're going to activate this Grand Spellbook Tower. They're going to go Judgment, and newsflash to both me and my opponent here. Grand Spellbook Tower getting Judgmented does actually proc its destruction effect, which is something that I did not realize was a thing that worked, because I didn't realize that when this card in your possession is destroyed by a card and sent to the graveyard, counts for when it hasn't finished resolving on field. So that's pretty funny. We got a Temperance off that, which we can then attempt to trigger using the Wisdom. We're going to make it immune to trap cards and then trigger the Temperance to get into a High Priestess. High Priestess is going to out the Logia, but we don't really have much else in the way of doing things. So we're there. Up to our opponent to find a tanky here, which is pretty much the exact thing that they needed. They're going to go the bear, popping down our High Priestess of Prophecy, and then the bear is going to walk in for a solid chunk of damage and then set this Tensu. They can then flip up the Tensu, go into the Gene Werewolf in their hand, into a Brotherhood of the Fire vs. Tiger King, which is going to get them a tanky, which lets them keep their advantage loop online. We're going to find this Power off the top. Doesn't really do anything if we don't have any spellcasters. They're going to find an MST and then go to this Tanky. Tanky's going to get them another bear. They're going to extra normal summon out the bear. Bear is going to walk in for 18, set the other Tanky for next turn, and then they're going to walk in for 24 with the Tiger King before setting this MST. We are going to find off the top a Veiler, which does nothing, and we are going to scoop it up and go to game 3. All right. Game 3, and I am going to be fully upfront with this. There's going to be misplays on both sides. This was a really long set, and I am playing this sick on my end, and we were just kind of chilling, you know. That not all of these replays are like highly competitive. I'm sure you've noticed that by this point. We're halfway through the month of Meadowlands, and not all of these replays have been super like everyone's playing their absolute best. We're just here to showcase them decks, all right? So if you're okay with it, I'm okay with it. We're just gonna let it ride. So we're going to lead this game off by drawing into a Spellbook of the Master. I guess I should probably go over the hands. We have a Blue Boy, a Justice, a Star Hall, a Dimensional Person, a Monster Reborn, and that Master Retreat for turn into our opponent's double Compulse, Gene Werewolf, Mystical Space Typhoon, and Forbidden Lance. We're going to normal summon out this Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, getting a Secrets. We're going to go Star Hall. Star Hall is going to activate. We're going to go get Secrets. Secrets is going to get the Tower. We're going to go Master, copying the Secrets Engraved to get ourselves a Fate, getting another counter on the Star Hall, and then we're going to activate the Grand Spellbook Tower and set both the Fate and the D Prison. They're going to go MST. MST is going to hit down our Fate. We're going to flip down our Magician of Prophecy so we can ideally get another search off of that. They're going to go the Tanky and then go Gorilla. Gorilla is going to out our other back row so they can walk over our Magician of Prophecy. So even though we get a search, so do they. They're going to go get a Tensu. Tensu is going to activate in the main phase 2, getting themselves access to a Gene Werewolf so they can then go into the Tiger King. Tiger King is going to get set the Tanky, and they're going to set down this Compulse. We have some things to do so. We're going to go shuffle back this Fate with the Grand Spellbook Tower and then go Secret. Secret's going to get us another Blue Boy. We're going to normal up this Blue Boy, which is going to attempt to get Compulse, but we're going to Wisdom that, protecting ourselves from trap cards. We're going to grab a Fate and set 2, and then pass to our opponent. They're going to draw into a Bottomless. They're going to go this Tenki. Tenki's going to get them a Bear. Extra normal summon of the Tensu is going to get them a Bear to the field, and we're going to Judgment that before they attempt to walk in with the Tiger King. And unfortunately, we do not have quite enough spell cards in the graveyard for the Banish, so we're just going to set the Blue Boy face down to get ourselves an Eternity as they walk over us with the Tiger King. They're going to set down both the Bottomless and the Compulse, and they're going to pass to us. We're going to go the Tower to shuffle back and then draw, which we find a Summoner Monk off of. We're going to go Eternity. Eternity is going to get us this Wisdom to protect our normal summon here. We're going to go Secret. Secret is going to get us another Blue Boy. We're going to summon out that Blue Boy. Blue Boy is going to get us a Search. They're going to go the Compulse, and we're going to chain the Wisdom to protect it again. But that does get that Wisdom out of hand, so we can't Master. We're going to get ourselves a Power. Power is going to get us just enough over the Tiger King so we can walk over and get a Search, which we do desperately need at this point in time. We're going to find a Fate and then set down that Fate. They find a Dark Hole, which is enough to turn off our Fate, unfortunately. They're just going to pass it back to us, and we draw into a High Priestess, which doesn't currently do anything. We find another Star Hall, and then we're going to normal summon out this 2700 attack Justice, which does get eaten by that Bottomless before we go Monster Reborn. Reborn is going to get us back a Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, and then we're going to activate this another Star Hall to get in for 17. Their turn to draw, they're going to find a Warning off the top. They're going to set that Warning, and we are going to go the Fate, maybe a little preemptively here to banish away that Warning, because we wanted to just try and keep the tower going. But unfortunately, doing so has left us with not a lot of resources that we actually value here. We have the Summoner Monk and a Book of Moon, but like no Spellbook spell cards in rotation here, which is a little unfortunate. We're going to go the Summoner Monk. Summoner Monk is going to pitch this Book of Moon, maybe also an incorrect play here, and then definitely incorrect play here going for Daigusto Emerald because I miscounted the amount of monsters in my graveyard. This Emerald is now currently doing nothing, as opposed to if we had just left the Exemplar on field. That was a 3100 attack monster, which could have put a lot of pressure on the board on the following turn. So we're just going to instead swing in for 19 and 18 and then pass to our opponent. They're going to find a Rabbit off the top, which is the literal perfect draw. They're going to go into double Sabersaurus here, which can then make a Logia, which contests our entire board well over. They're going to walk over our Daigusto Emerald and then set down this Forbidden Lance. We're going to go this Temperance. Temperance to attempt to walk into the Logia, but that's going to get lanced all the way down to 200. And then we're going to set this Dimensional Prison. They're going to find a Judgment off the top, which is pretty phenomenal. They're going to attempt to walk over our Blue Boy, but we are going to Dim Prison, which is going to force out the Logia. But that does mean they do still get to walk over our Blue Boy, and they still have a Judgment online. And we only have 2 High Priestesses of Prophecies in hand, which currently do a whole lot of nothing. They're just going to be able to walk in direct for 24 and wrap this set up. So even though that set still had a good chunk of misplays and, you know, it is what it is, I still really love Spellbook. I think this deck is really, really fun. It is absolutely one of the best decks in the room, and for good reason. A lot of these cards are really phenomenal, and I think there is totally a world where we win that game 3 if I was playing a little better. That said, I am still kind of reconsidering the Summoner Monks in here at all. I do think they bring some important pieces to the table, like being able to get access to the ranked 4 pool is nice. I just don't know if it is better than playing more Spellbook cards, because we do tend to run into an issue where if we are playing a little more freely with our Fates activations, like you saw in that game 3, we can just kind of run out of Spellbook spells, which is not an ideal scenario. And I think this has more to do with my play rather than the build itself, but it's something that I'm keeping in mind for a future potential edit to this list. Other than that, though, I do think this list is pretty solid. I have been kind of messing around with less copies of Tower to fit something else in. I've also been reconsidering the Upstart Goblins for something else in main, but I'm not currently sure what it would be. I know Jowgen is a solid card. I've considered having this guy in main as well. But also, what's the other card? Kaiku, I think. I actually don't hate this card. It's decent. It's a summon target off of Monk, and it does get pretty large off of the Star Halls. And it's also just like removal for your opponent's graveyard, and it protects your own graveyard from banishing things, which is pretty nice. It lets you keep a lot of your key pieces online from your opponent's banishment, so you can instead just worry about banishing your own things through things like High Priestess and Fate. It basically just gives you more control over when things get banished, which is pretty nice. That said, though, I'm having a lot of fun with this list. I think there is definitely still some more things to be done with it. I do like it a lot, and I'm really excited to see where it goes from here. But that said, I want to thank you all so much for sticking around to the end of this video. I have really been enjoying the month of Meadowlands, and I'm hoping to kind of kick this cold or whatever it is so I can get a little bit more things done. I don't want to push off this scrapyard that's coming up this Sunday, but if I do end up getting a little more sick, then it's probably going to be delayed a little bit, but we'll see to that when we get there. But I'm going to hop on out of here, and I will see you all in the next video for when we talk about Mermail. Bye-bye!